What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir Technology stock, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, February 22nd. So you guys, Palantir finished the day today down 66 cents a share, 2.82%. You are going to see some bouncing around here in the after hours. Nvidia just reported earnings, so we are going to see some bouncing around. But listen, as I always say, I put much more weight, unless it's a direct catalyst for that particular stock. In this case, of course, it's not, on the regular trading hours movement rather than after hours. The reason why is because volume in the after hours is always going to be so low. Now, granted, it is slightly higher here today. We matched some of the lower candles during like lunch hour here today in regular hours, here in the after hours, but that only lasted on one or two 1-minute bars. So, I mean, really, I'm taking this after hours movement with a grain of salt. I don't expect Palantir to be moving too much here. So let's take a look at Palantir here. Let's start here with the 5-minute chart today so we can get a good comparison. You can see that we faded hard into the open and then had a big pump off the open. So if we zoom in on simply today's movement and then we start comparing volume, okay, to me, this is actually really interesting. Because on this big opening drive candle, okay, we basically regained the majority of that pre-market fade, if not all of that fade that we saw in pre-market, and we rejected off that to a T. That's a trade to a lot of traders, is trading short off of a rejection off of the pre-market high territory. Okay, also it happened to be that $23 region that we were talking so highly about yesterday, and I'm going to want to see that reclaimed. But let's start here with the volume profile on the 5 minutes. You can see here that this opening candle, of course, we typically expect increased volume on the open, usually the most volume of the day, but we have to look at it contextually so. And if we compare this to yesterday, while the opening candle was similar, it was actually slightly more today, in comparison to the rest of the candles during the day, I thought it was actually very interesting that we were seeing more than double on that opening candle here today, or approximately double. Whereas yesterday we saw a lot more competing volume candles supporting a variety of moves, both bullish and bearish. So I thought that was really interesting to see on that big opening candle. Again, the majority of today's loss coming from that pre-market and yesterday's after hours movement here. During the actual trading day, essentially trading a volatile consolidation for the majority of the day, which we're going to come back and talk about in a little bit here. But let's move on to the 30-minute chart and take a look at areas to watch as we head into tomorrow, of course, Thursday. So we look here on the 30-minute chart. First thing that I noticed, see this 50-period moving average that has now come down rather aggressively since we looked at this one yesterday. And it is now lining up with that $23 technical region that we've been watching so closely. Especially looking at the 30-minute chart, guys, I'm going to want to see from a bullish perspective 23 reclaim here, like ASAP, tomorrow ideally. Okay, and if you're a bear, you're going to want to see that 50-period continue downside down through 23 and create an additional psychological barrier to make another test of 23 and continue to ideally push that stock downside from a psychological perspective. Let's move on now to the 4-hour chart. Take a look at levels in play here on the 4-hour. Of course, yesterday we were looking at that 50-period, and it was very much so the case that we were looking at that. But now today, as of approximately, about a half hour after the close is when I'm recording this, we're about 6.25% off of that 50-period. Listen, same deal. If I'm a bull, I first of all am going to want to see 23 reclaim, but my ultimate goal, at least when looking at the 4-hour, remember, we're always looking at multiple time frames here. I ideally want to see the 4-hour get a retest and a reclaim, but we're 6.25% away. We've seen crazier things out of Palantir, of course, but really here on the 4-hour, I'm going to kind of have to punt what I'm looking at to the daily chart, because the daily is going to tell the ultimate story here, and it is the most important. It's going to be the most contextual because everybody's looking at it, right? 23 is my region to watch. Okay, we closed today at 22.74. We'll see where we end up in pre-market tomorrow. But here on the daily, I mean, yes, the 50-day is making its way upside, which from a bullish perspective, that is a good thing to see. Ideally, we want to see this 50-day move up as quickly as possible. And like I typically say, get some feet up underneath the move here that we've recently had on Palantir stock. But the clear story today, and remember, when it's obvious, don't overcomplicate it, is 23 bucks because we gave that up today. I just want to see that reclaim. If I'm a bull, a reclaim of 23, ideally, you know, the higher the better. But a reclaim of 23, and I'm thrilled. Even if we just hold that into the weekend, that would be great to see. Bears, what are you thinking? Right? As a bear, I think pretty clearly most bears are thinking, okay, what's the easiest way to discourage some bulls? Well, let's give up 23 and then treat it as a resistance. So that's exactly what you bears are going to be looking to do here. Obviously, we've already faded below 23, and now you're looking for a couple of retests of 23 and a fade hard downside away, heading down toward that 2130 level is your ideal scenario as a bear. Applied volatility. Actually, let's zoom out to get a little bit of a better grasp on where we stand compared to the last few months here. IV, you can see in the very recent past is in the lower range of normal, okay? But once we start comparing to multiple months, you can tell. You can see here that we're more in the mid-range here. So depending on your intended trade time frame, for example, if you're looking to buy options that expire in a week, you can see here that compared to your intended trade time frame, we are sitting a little lower. A month, we're sitting a little lower. But if you're looking 4 months out, you know, which typically I'm not a fan of buying contracts that expire anything less than like 3 to 6 months out. I'm a big fan of leaps. But of course, the shorter dated contracts can have their place, and we always need to use, like especially when we start getting shorter dated, IV, having that in your favor when you purchase them, and especially, you know, also when you sell them, depending on which side you're taking, to open the position that is. It's really, really crucial, especially in those short dated contracts, to have IV in your favor. But you always have to compare it. I mean, you can't just compare. First of all, you can't compare Palantir's IV to any other stock. You have to only compare it to itself, and then you need to be contextual about the time frame. Okay, you can't compare weekly options to the yearly IV. You have to compare weekly options to what the IV has been in the last 1 to 4 weeks. That equilibrium changes depending on your time frame. That's really, really crucial. Okay, let's take a look, speaking of options, at the options bias here. We have 330,000 total contracts traded here today on Palantir. 193,000 of those were calls. 136,000 of those were puts. So we are seeing an overall call bias in the call put ratio. And the short-term speculators, okay, that's 0 to 20 delta range. We have just about 72,000 calls and about 50,500 puts. So in the short term as well, we're seeing a slight call bias here. Again, very common, at least as of late on Palantir, to see heavy bullish bias. It's been probably out of all the stocks that I track, it's been the most consistently heavily leaning to the bullish side, the call side, which really I think is very interesting. Listen, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. Our goal is my goal is to hit 2K in by market open on this coming Monday. And I think we can do it, but certainly not without your guys' help. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.